Hello and welcome back to another video. I'm here with Sam2h and Igo. Thanks for coming along, guys.
Thanks for having me.
Happy to be here.
So today we're going to talk about Smuggler. We'll start with standard exotics, builds, power-ups, and we'll move on to expertise. So Igo, do you want to start us off and tell us what you run in exotics in your suit?
Sure, I run PvP crit chance, PvP or pistol crit chance, and pistol damage for exotics. I do mostly con luck strength right now. Actually, gotta get that 2 hit chance.
Sure. I think I run about the same. I don't put as much into strength, but
I run con agility luck for my basic attachments, and for exotics I do general crit, pistol crit, and pistol damage, and I use pistol action cost when I'm running around solo in place of general crit.
So do you also use full pistol damage power-ups in battlefields?
Yeah, 8s, yeah, for sure.
Yep, all 8s.
Yeah, I think that's pretty important. That smuggler assist damage can be pretty massive whenever used right, and whenever you have that in combination with your pistol modules. And speaking of your pistol modules, I guess they're called illegal weapon modules now, but Master Underworld is an important thing to do before you get into battlefields. You can get away with not having that done with like world PvP and PvE, but if you're going to be into the competitive scene, I would say this is a must-have. You need to get it. It's a lot of grinding for sure, but it's going to really pay off in the end.
Yeah, it's a really terrible grind. It's one of the dumbest systems in the game, if I say so myself. Yeah, so each tier, so there's 3 tiers. Each tier gives you 1% damage bonus and 1 meter range bonus and 200 armor bonus. The 200 armor bonus kind of gets mitigated by hidden pockets in the expertise, but the 1 meter range and 1% damage bonus are really good to have, especially the range bonus in PvP.
And you're definitely going to notice it, that pistol range damage, when you're trying to get off those assists at range, you're going to fall short if you don't have this bonus.
Mm-hmm. It's especially noticeable when you use a Black Hand Annihilator. That way you get up to the full 63, 64 meters, and that's really important for just getting general dire snares on people, especially if you're an assist caller. You get to call out those long target dires.
Yep, Black Hand Annihilator is pretty vital, honestly, to being a smuggler in PvP.
Something to consider is space missions are a pretty good way to get those IPMs. I have never really done this. I know you have, Sam. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, the IPMs really fill up when you do space convoys with a group, tier 6s. It's actually so easy to do. I bet a lot of those spaces actually end up deleting them because they have no use for it, which is sad, but but it's way more efficient than doing PvP missions on the ground. That's for sure, if you have access to that tier 6 convoy group.
Yeah, it's especially faster compared to the RNG nature of the ground missions, where you don't always know where the hell you're going. You don't always know if you're going to go on a space mission and whatnot. It's just so much more streamlined to get them in comparison.
If you don't want to do space, you also have the alternative of you can have 2 alts up and GPP you to the other planets if it does require space travel.
Yeah, whenever I dip below 100, I feel like some OCD kicking. I
Yeah.
gotta get higher again.
Okay, so I think we can move on to expertise now. Smuggler expertise is one of the most versatile expertises in the game. With Smuggler, there is a wide variety of viable options you can choose from. So the very first page, there is one point you want to invest like automatically right away, and that is into gun oil. You have some other options after you do that. I personally, I put my points into strength. I don't bother with the hidden padding boxes, so I'm going to defer to Sam for that talking point.
I'd actually like to go back to you as to why you don't want to do those boxes.
I don't really like the way the system works. I feel like I can get my armors up higher with outside buffs than I could just with hidden padding. I like to get it above the 10k threshold.
Okay, that's fair. Okay, so I do have the 4 points in both boxes, or 2 points in both boxes. My stats right now are with battle armor, 9,700 kinetic, 9,800 energy. In an emp buff, it kind of gives me a lot of leeway to put the points into con. Since I don't have any natural defenses in a PvP situation, I will want to soak up as much damage as possible to get to LOS quicker, or safety So that's my mentality with it.
Personally, I do take the armor boxes, mostly when I run a cybernetic suit, just because of the slightly lower amount of armor that I'll get, but I still hover around 9.3k cannon energy without an imp buff. And I do the same thing as Sam, where I take most of my imp buff points, put them into con, so I can tank more damage that way. But like you said, I would say the armor choice is a preference, because you can definitely get away running without those 4 boxes. I know you do this, Max, and then your imp buff becomes mostly armors, but you get more freedom with the expertise, where you could take both pistol and spot a sucker, whatever else the hell you want.
Yeah, I think you free up 2 points, which is honestly pretty huge in the expertise for Smuggler, since so versatile, as you said.
It's 4 points if you don't take all the armor boxes, which is huge if you think about it.
But you still
So
need
much.
2 on tier 1, though. That's what I mean.
Oh, I think what Max says, he puts mostly in strength, right, Max? You put
Yeah,
3 in
I put
strength,
it-
1 in gun oil.
I put some more points into strength, so I don't have to put as much strength into my suit, if you catch my drift.
Yeah.
That's one way to look at it, yeah.
But you mentioned cybernetics, Igo. Do you want to explain kind of why that's beneficial choice for Smuggler?
Sure. So with cybernetics, you trade a slight amount of armor. It's around 400 or 500 points in total for, I want to say, 1250 health in total. So it's a nice little boost for barely a trade-off with Smuggler, especially when you take those 2 armor boxes. You basically don't need to worry about losing that much with them. Plus, they look cool.
Yeah, that's the main point.
But again, it's really a personal preference thing.
I think you guys' choice with the hidden padding and line pockets is more popular, so I'm going to fill that out in this expertise for clarity. At this point, we have the second row unlocked. We have a few options to go with here. First being Spot a Sucker. I personally like to always take this ability. It's actually quite incredible once the tree is fully fleshed out, and they recently made a change to the way that works on Legends. We'll talk about that in a minute once we get to that line. Some other options you have on the second line are action cost for fast draw and precision strike. Now this, it's not that great in itself, but we mostly pick this up to get to the box after this. So you have to put 4 points into this box to access the precise speed, which we'll get to. And skipping over the melee line, because it's really not viable for competitive PvP battlefields. Melee in itself is a fun playstyle to experiment with and want to meme around.
Keyword meme.
Yeah. I know Sam had some experience with that.
Yeah, that was mostly back on live, though, before Dire Snares and all that crap.
Yeah. So the last point on this line is off the cuff. We'll get to what you need to be using this with in a bit, but basically this is a very quick buff that you put on yourself that guarantees a critical hit on your next attack. So with that out of the way, we have the third line available to us. I think all of us here invest into Spot a Sucker, is that right?
Yes, most of the time.
I personally prefer it over Break the Deal in BFs just because I medic can't clear it off.
It lasts 5 seconds longer, too.
Yeah, it's quite nice. So I'm going to put that 1 point into Meager Fortune. And I will put 2 points in the line pockets like you guys have. And on the third column, you put the points into Hair Trigger to get this precise speed, which increases your pistol critical chance by 10%. So I like to put 2 points into here as well. So in the very last column here, we have Double Deal, which a passive 10% per point spent to reset the off-the-cuff cooldown.
Well, short story about the off-the-cuff thing. I've seen it done 12 times in a row.
Oh my.
It was like early Legends. Not even Legends, it was Reborn, actually. But yeah, we would make bets with each other, like who could get the most off-the-cuffs in a battlefield when we're waiting for the other team.
So now we're on the fourth row. First thing you have is Wretched Fate. So Spot a Sucker by itself really doesn't do much. I think it just removes precision from your target with the initial point. So if you're picking up Spot a Sucker at all, you're going to want to put more than just the first point into it. Otherwise, just don't pick it up at all.
Also, when you use it, just use Mark 1. You don't have to use Mark 4.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
the Mark 1 saves on so much action. And
like the difference is what? I think Mark 4 is 100 precision debuff, and then Mark 1 is 10.
Something like that. Yeah.
especially, you know, if you have one officer, that little bit of action can go a long ways. With that next point in Wretched Fate, it's quite a nice addition to that debuff, which it makes enemies glancing blow 50% more often.
Yeah, it pairs really well with Mirror Forge.
Probably skip over Idiot Proof Plan. We probably don't take that. It's just a 6% damage decrease. Now, Hammer Fanning, it's something that I don't personally take, but I know some people do stick a point in there or two, or if they're trying to get both debuffs, which is Break the Deal and Spot Sucker, you can max out that full line.
I've never personally liked Hammer Fanning. I think it's a waste of 4 points. Just because of the pistol speed, you don't see it as often as you would with the 1-2 pummelist melee. So
personally, I put 1 point in Hammer Fanning just for the extra attack chance. Not a lot of people know this, but that extra attack from Hammer Fanning can occur at the same time as Lucky Break and Card Up Your Sleeve, so you can simultaneously get 2 of those extra attacks at once. And
I remember
it's not a lot of extra damage, but it adds up over time, I feel.
I remember I used to didn't believe it, and then you showed me a screenshot. I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah, not a lot of people realize that, but it does add up. Plus, there's no recourse on Hammer Fanning, so you could potentially get like 6 of them in a row, along with every single double hit from Card Up Your Sleeve. It's kind of worth it, I would say.
So with that, the very last column on this page, end of the line, you want to get this for reasons we'll talk about later. It works almost the same way as Off the Cuff. It just doubles the damage of your next attack. So the very last row of the first page, we have the last box of Spot a Sucker. And what this does is you put 2 points into it, and when you throw Spot a Sucker on someone, it will decrease their damage output by 50%. Now, I believe, Sam, this is still only working for normal hits. Is that correct?
Yeah, so like if you crit, I think that calculation is still bugged.
Okay.
Yeah, it was. I think the calculation is actually a gamble where it's up to a 50% reduction on other hits.
Well, that too.
No, actually, I did some testing on that, and it's a flat 50% when you have 2 points on it.
Really?
Yeah, I did.
Really?
I tested out with the BH traps because those always deal pretty much the consistent same damage. It always reduced it by half each time.
Huh.
Interesting.
Well, yeah. Anyways, yeah, about the crit damage though, it won't mitigate properly crit damage bonuses. Same with Break the Deal. Same with any debuff. I'm pretty sure that's still bugged.
The next column here, you have Narrow Escape. Not if you say you're only doing battlefields. Not mandatory, but I'm always gonna get it no matter what because your officer can die and you're snared and whatever. You need to get around a corner, and that popping Narrow Escape can help you do that.
And if your team is wiping, it's also good to just have in case you need to get the fuck out and reset it. Save a kill.
Next off is Break the Deal. If you put points in the Hammer Fanning, you can unlock this. So Break the Deal, it's a debuff you put on someone that reduces their damage output by, I believe, 75%. It can be cleared off, and another thing about it is it takes, I believe, a lot of action to use.
I think that's also a bug too. It doesn't respect pistol action cost mods, or any action cost mods, I don't think.
So you could go full debuff Smuggler and pick up both of them, but I just like to stick with Spot a Sucker. I think it's much more reliable.
It is, and it's just easier to get used to using it so you don't have to worry about it getting cleansed off, like from an officer or a medic.
Yep. So the very last point on this page I would say is pretty mandatory is Nerf Herder. It's a great CC ability. I'll talk about it here shortly, but definitely pick this up if you've gone all the way down that tree. With the second page, the Smuggler page, we also have some more options here. We'll talk about the Pistol Whip line first. In order to get Pistol Whip, you have to pick up Skullduggery, and then you have to invest 3 other points into top row here. So I'm just going to stick a point into Healthy Profits, which is your Call a Favor Medic, and I'm going to stick the other point into either 2 points into Easy Money. The second thing you have to do to get Pistol Whip is get Impossible Odds, and you also have to invest 3 more points in this line here. So I'm going to put those into Feeling Lucky, and we will go down that line after we talk about Pistol Whip. Actually, you will have to get 8 points. I'm going to put those points into Lucky Break, and then after that you can pick up that ability, and you can either choose to extend the duration of Pistol Whip, and you can also increase the stun chance of it. But Pistol Whip, I just wanted to get that out of the way. It's not a mandatory ability at all.
Yeah, I think it's really useful if you're fighting on the roof in close quarters and the medic, lags behind. You can just end it right there.
There's also some other really interesting tricks you can do with it.
So let's talk about the Feeling Lucky line. We have 8 points into it at this point. We have the full box of Feeling Lucky and the full box of Lucky Break. If you have these points invested, you're going to want to put the last points into Card Up Your Sleeve. Not everyone gets the full 4 boxes here, but I like to do it.
I do the same thing. I feel like if I'm putting all those points in that column, like I'm going to go all the way.
And another nice thing to have with Card Up Your Sleeve is Blaster at your side.
So it's based off of weapon speed. So for example, you're using a melee weapon, your attack speed is 1. Level at the damage 200 times or whatever, so you're 180 level technically. So you're getting 180 bonus damage on both your default attacks and special attacks. Now if your weapon speed is 0.4, then it goes down to 72 per attack and special attack.
Another viable option is you can pick up False Hope. It's another nice CC ability. Kind of situational, but if your Nerf Herder is on cooldown, you can throw this and it'll work almost the same way in a sense. So I would say tend to avoid going down the Scandal line. At first glance, it might look like an appealing option because it's a straight damage increase. Especially Smooth Move, it increases pistol's damage by 4%. It's simply too much of an investment to get, I would say.
Yeah, it's not worth it in comparison to the Card Up Your Sleeve line.
Yeah, the point value is really, really bad in that line. Like 4 expertise points for 4% damage bonus, that's pretty bad.
You have a limited number of skill points, so just use them wisely. I have never taken off the books personally.
It's useful if you're solo grinding in PvE for money.
Yeah, that's about it really.
So the last point I'll talk about here is inside information and shoot first. Inside information, it's not as useful as it used to be. You could use it on yourself or allies, and it would tell you the exact bounty in amount that they had on them, but now it just tells them if they have a bounty, if they're being hunted, I believe.
Correct.
And then after you have inside information, you can go to the shoot first line. It's just a single box, and it grants you a pretty powerful single target attack. I think it's pretty close to being on par with Sniper Shot in terms of how hard it can hit, but I think it's more rare for shoot first to hit that high.
I would call it a baby Sniper Shot or a pocket Sniper Shot, because I've seen it go up to 7.5k strike throughs before. Obviously, it's down
Never
to
gotten that lucky.
RNG, but
I think I've seen 11k on it actually.
it can happen. So not a terrible choice, especially in a battlefield. It's just extra damage on a target.
Got quite a long cooldown too, which is very noticeable, and as well as the action drain. So make sure you're with officers when you're using it.
For the record, it's 30-second cooldown.
Yeah.
It used to be 6 seconds a long time ago.
6 seconds?
60 seconds.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like, damn. Okay, well.
You're running action
used to be
fast.
crazy, yeah. So there's a lot of mix and match here. I throughout this recording, I kind of borrowed points from here and there to invest in other places. So there's nothing set in stone here. You can choose a lot of different options here, but you can't really go wrong with Break the Deal. You can't go wrong with Nerf Herder. I would say always put points into those. Pistol Whip's kind of a meme, but it can be helpful at times, and the entire line of Feeling Lucky is also very nice to have once you notice it proccing. Okay, so I think we move on to abilities now. First ability we'll talk about is, now we're going to preface this with the idea that you're going to be using the Rogue set, which is 100% the most viable Smuggler set for PvP. Doesn't even come close. You have 100% chance to die your targets with a full 5-piece. So whenever you use Concussion Shot with your rogue set equipped, it will automatically apply a dire snare as long as your enemy does not have the recourse on it. This is what makes Smuggler shine, because that guaranteed CC can really bring the pain onto the enemy team, especially when you're up close and personal with it.
Yeah, so in a battlefield setting, say we're in jungle with a base, right? We're at the opposite ends. You kind of want to pick targets with Concussion Shot that are away from the base, because if they're too close, and with the server lag as it is, they're probably going to get free recourse by just getting back to the corner again. So you want to pick your targets that just get way out of position, and it usually ends up being an easy pick if they're too out of position.
And one thing you need to be aware of is you need to be careful about using this ability on BH, because you don't want to give BHs free recourses. This is the one thing you really want to watch out for, because with that recourse, they can have basically immunity to come walk all over your team.
Yep.
Bleed and fast draw, I think we can just kind of talk about those together. Bleed is a nice sustained damage ability, and it applies a bleeding dot to your opponent. And the same with fast draw. It's pretty much a damage pumper. You can spam it quite a lot and does not take much action at all. It's nice for assisting on targets. With that, we have Nerf Herder. I wanted to talk about this before talking about some of the other attacks because of the nature of Nerf Herder.
Yeah, so basically, you pop Nerf Herder, it gives you a buff that on the next critical hit you will nerf and root the target. Now, there's a lot of nice little combos you can do, but I think Max and Sam are going to explain that pretty soon here. But in general, it's probably your second or first biggest CC aside from Dire Snares.
So basically how Nerf Herder works, most people use it in conjunction with Cover Fire or Fan Shot. You can use it with either or, whatever you have off cooldown at the time. And you can combine Nerf Herder with Off the Cuff, which will guarantee that the Nerf Herder will land on your targets. So using that, both of those buffs on yourself, and it will then in turn, with the COE ability, root whoever's in front of you as long as they do not have a scatter up.
Another thing I'd like to add on that is, not everyone knows this, but you can use the General's Airstrike, do the same combo, but instead of Cover Fire, you use General's Airstrike, and you can get in big AoE Nerf Herder, and it hits pretty hard too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's like SFP with Officer. Airstrike works quite nice with it.
Also helps if you don't want to put yourself on the open to get that angle for that Cover Fire Nerf Herder.
For sure.
Yeah, it's much safer to do that.
Yeah.
Kind of a crappy thing about Off the Cuff and Into the Line is if you have Synapse Focus Crystal, that proc can eat up your
Actually,
debuff.
I believe they fixed that.
Oh, did they? I think it still fires off on Opportunistic Attack, though. I feel like I just saw that happen last week to me.
It happened to me earlier tonight in PvP.
Yeah,
I don't know what it was, but yeah, it's something.
It's very annoying. I think most of us tend to use End of the Line with Cover Fire as much as possible.
Yeah, because Cover Fire is the higher damage bonus.
Yeah, you can really unleash Hellfire on people with those buffs, and especially with damage buffs like Layer Crystal, Binox, and whatnot. You can also use it on Pistol Whip if you're only worried about a single target.
Also guarantees a Pistol Whip will hit and not miss usually.
Oh, of course. Yeah, that's also a good point. If you want to make sure someone is getting Pistol Whipped, you want to hit Off the Cuff before you use that ability on them. So Fan Shot, we talked about this. This is kind of a watered down version of Cover Fire. It doesn't do quite as much damage, and it does not apply a snare. But like I said, it's also a good a nice ability to use with Nerf Herder if say your Cover Fire is on cooldown.
So in a battlefield setting or even world PvP, it helps a lot to communicate that the other group has a charge up or their scatter's wearing off, because that helps your Smuggler get ready to position themselves to get off a Nerf Herder or save their Off the Cuff for that moment. And what I usually look for when I'm on my smuggler is just I kind of just keep like a running clock in my head, like, oh, they just hit scatter. I'm just gonna like try to guesstimate 30 seconds from now, and then go from there and hope they don't have a next scatter. Because even that 5 seconds being rooted between scatters is huge.
A mistake I see a lot of people make, and I'm guilty of this as well. I just kind of sometimes I passively hit Nerf Herder before I'm about to throw a COE, but a lot of people just spam Nerf Herder as soon as they have cover fire up and just throw it regardless of people having scatter up. Now, I will say that this is not always a bad idea, because especially if this is a very back and forth fight and people are dying left and right, even if like some of that group has scatter up, that Nerf Herder is still going to affect some of those people because they died with the scatter. So some of them are not going to have a run up, and they will thus get affected by it.
That's a good point. I actually never thought of that.
And the same goes for False Hope too, because it works pretty much the same way. It's just got a delayed fuse on it.
I would say False Hope is fairly useful, not as Nerf Herder because of the delay, but usually I try to use it to either bait out a scatter or just a general route if I don't have my Nerf Herder up. Plus, it's also useful, not everyone realizes this, but it has a 100% trivial chance, which is equivalent to glancing blow. So you can kind of fuck up someone's SFP push with that too, if it lands.
I personally save it for when the other team is dire trapped.
That's also a useful time.
Because then I know no one's gonna outrun the grenade radius of it. It acts really weird, but yeah.
Sure. So it's not necessarily, you don't necessarily have to always use it as a root ability. It's nice for the debuffs as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have Dirty Trick next, and that's your AoE ability as a smuggler. You drop it at your feet, and it pulses, sort of like the plasma mine on Commando, except this applies a snare to your targets that step into it.
Yeah, I find that more useful in solo PvP than anything. But there's been times where you can pair it with off the cuff and Nerf Herder, and it actually works well if they have a charge up. That is.
I think you can proc Feeling Lucky too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I also like to use Dirty Trick whenever I know there's a BH cloaked in the area. It can help to kind of figure out where he's at, so you can try to move away from him.
That's a good idea.
Now, shoot first, we talked about this. Long cooldown, but great assist damage. So if you have it, using it on assist targets. Spot a Sucker. Now this is a pretty tactical ability, I would say. There's a lot of ideal targets you can use this on, and you want to be smart with it for sure. So personally, I really like to either use it on the enemy DPS, which is like either Smuggler, Commando, or save it for an officer that's charging in with SFP.
Yeah, you should coordinate with your medic to see who he has targeted for like stasising the officer, because you don't want to waste it with an officer in stasis.
And this is nice to use in tandem with target binds as well. So if you have a target binds for the person you want to keep nerfing, you can spam that, pretty much keep them nerfed the entirety of the fight as long as it's on cooldown. Don't be throwing it on the medic. It's going to be less useful on the medic. I mean, it still will be sort of useful on it, but you're going to mostly want to be using it on DPS targets.
It'll only be useful on Brotic's medic. That's about it.
Yeah.
1 mil damage on medic.
Jesus Christ.
Toxic. Break the Deal works kind of the same way. You can, if you have both, that's great. You can put it on an officer with SFP up, and they're going to hit like a wet noodle. But just keep in mind that Break the Deal can be cleansed. Now, Pistol Whip, there's a lot of great uses for this. In your experience, Sam, what's the best targets to use this on and when?
Usually when my group's pushing on the other in a close space, so usually the roof, because there's not much, you can't really run away that well on the roof. Just go for a medic that's either dire snared or just kind of close by.
It's also really helpful if there's a solo medic. If both sides have solo medic, you can potentially end the fight if you land it.
I'd like to add another potential time to use it. It's a little more risky, but If you know their BH is cloaked, and you have a sprint stim, in your experience, you probably know where he's going to come from, so you can line up the off-the-cuff plus pistol whip on him to stop his push. If you time it right, he won't get his traps off, but like I said, it's a very risky use of it, but it can work.
Yeah, I would say if you're dired and you really have nothing to lose and he's in range of you, you might as well just try to use it, even if you don't have off-the-cuff available. Narrow escape, we touched on that briefly. If you hit it, I don't believe it's gonna increase your speed past the officer run. I could be wrong.
You're right, it's not.
Okay, I thought scatter was faster than that.
Yeah.
But, if you want to save a kill, you're trying to GTFO, your officer's dead, use it, try to get away. You don't have a run, use it. It may prevent you from getting dired, which is always nice because you have no oh shit button. Last thing, this is not really that useful in BFs, but call a favor medic. If you're really struggling on heals and you need a quick heal, that medic NPC can bomb you a couple times and can actually save your life. I've known this has happened to me quite a few times where I've called that NPC and it's saved me because the medic was either incapped or really struggling with heals. So definitely more of a world 1v1 ability, I would say.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So last ability here, I wanted to talk about it a little more in depth because it's got a lot of useful purposes. Cloak Ally. Now, one of the primary focuses of this is to cloak a BH who has their sprint up so that we can get sneaky traps off on the enemy team.
Yeah, so especially in the battlefield setting, say your team is getting demolished by their team's assist in target calling, you can use it to save someone's life from being totally killed, which can be potential in escaping to cover. I would also say that another huge use of it is cloaking a medic so they can get a res or an area res off, which can totally turn the fight around.
Or cloaking an officer so you don't lose your group scatter.
Especially if it's a solo officer group. You don't want to lose those runs because they keep the flow of the group going.
Make sure you communicate your cloak too.
Yeah, so they don't accidentally break it.
So the BH knows that he can't be cloaked for another push, and B, like Igo said, doesn't hit any button to uncloak themselves.
And I think you should be very vocal as a smuggler in general with communication. There's a lot of things you can communicate. You can communicate your debuffs, your CC, when you're about to CC, so that your team knows when to push. Smuggler is a really good profession to call movement on, call the fight on. It's also a pretty good profession to call targets on, assist. I would say, personally, in my opinion, second only to BH.
Yeah, it's a great shot calling class because of its insane CC abilities.
We talked about Blackhand Annihilator briefly, but so this weapon, I believe it's innately at 60 meter range.
Correct.
Okay, and it's really got poor DPS, so you're not gonna want to be using this at all times when you have it. I would say almost it's a mandatory. Yeah, you can get away with not having it, but it's gonna want to be on your checklist to get, especially for battlefields and if you are calling targets or movement or anything like that.
Yeah, because without it, you're going to be risking yourself to getting close, and if you get too close to the fire, you're going to get burned. Corny as that sounds.
I think one thing we may want to talk about are the applications of when to use Dire Snare. I know we talked about most of them when to use Dire Snare, but something we didn't talk about is, like, say an officer has SFP up or there's a medic that's in stasis that you want to make sure they don't GTFO.
Oh, yeah.
Another use of Dire Snare is if you want to make sure someone's not going to get out of your range, like say a medic stasis and you want to push the enemy team off of them, you do that and then you snare them as soon as their stasis wears out so you can kill their medic and potentially win the fight. Another use of Dire Snare is if an enemy officer has a SFP up, you can dire them and focus fire them, or you end up dying them and they're around the corner and they can't get their second or third volley off. Can also be useful like that.
Yeah, so it just goes back to using Dire Snare smart. You if you want to, you can spam it on people, but I would say try to use at least a little bit of brain cells, and because once you give them that Dire Snare, you're gonna give them recourse too. So
yeah, it comes with like feeling the momentum of a fight. If they're falling back and they're struggling, yeah, of course tap Dire because they're gonna be thrown to the wolves. So
for sure,
just keep momentum in your favor that way. But like Rhodes said, use your brain cells. Don't be stupid.
This is more of like a kind of a meme side note, but really want to piss off your enemy team, load up to ISD on your smuggler in the ship and have that, what is it, 7% damage increase in crit as opposed to the normal ISD buff of like 5%.
That's the secret special.
Oh my
I
god.
think you get a little more health too for con.
But I'm not advocating that whatsoever. That's a pretty cancerous thing to do.
Destroys friendships.
Yes, that's it. That's the word.
One of the skills we didn't talk about that is pretty vital to success as a smuggler in battlefields or anything PvP related is understanding how line of sight works in this game and how like the client to server connection can be so laggy sometimes that you could take advantage for that for yourself. And say like we're at jungle warfare and I'm kiting around the base, like going back and forth from the wall to outside. I can use it to my advantage to think that the enemy is thinking that I'm going to stay outside, but already on my screen and already the server registers that I'm already behind a wall, so that wastes target time for the opposition.
And that's just something you learn from years of PvPing.
You just get exactly. You get a feel for it. You're not gonna understand it day one, but
for sure.
You'll get a feel for it.
And you almost have to take advantage of that as smuggler because it's the only class that does not have a oh shit button. So
you're fucked if you get caught in the open.
Definitely, smuggler is one of the classes that can rack up those deaths if you're not playing carefully.
Yeah, it's definitely a very high skill ceiling class, I would say. It's also probably the second top DPS in a battlefield, where Commando's probably first. Because you can pump out some really good numbers once you get used to it.
I think I saw an export of someone getting like 2 mil in damage on Smuggler, maybe 3 mil. Was that you, Sam?
Yeah, Sam's done 3 mil before.
I did Bloodfin once, I think. Or Starsight, I forget which one.
I've done 1.7 here. Still, you can rack up that damage.
To expand on that really quickly, with the Black Hand and doing damage and stuff, you want to use your Black Hand as much as possible in the beginning, just to keep your auto attacks going, so you do proc feeling lucky, and you're ready when you push to proc Lucky Break, hopefully, and start really doing damage.
Along with that, I would say to also put a weapon power up on your Black Hand. It's just extra damage anyways. Don't forget to do that.
But don't ever like put yourself out to do damage, because you're just gonna be a liability if you keep getting killed over and over. You're better off staying alive and doing less damage than doing more damage and getting farmed.
Yeah, it's important to play it safe with Smuggler for sure.
And that probably goes for a lot of professions too. But yeah.
And don't forget to switch off your Black Hand once you're in range.
God, I hate that.
We're all guilty of this. Every
guilty,
single smuggler has done this. I don't care what you say.
I could have sworn I freaking switched.
So, along with any other DPS profession in this game, some really important items to get a hold of are the technical binocs, which are 5% damage increase for about 10-15 seconds. The layer crystal, which gives you a whole bunch of nice damage buffs, crit buffs too. And then the Hoth radio, which adds a flat increase of, I think it's 1 to 200 damage. Could be more, I don't remember.
200 flat.
Yeah, so all of those buffs are really nice to use when you're proccing, especially. You can melt people with that. Yeah,
Smuggler is a class with a really high skill ceiling, like probably next to BH or Medic. Actually Officer too. I mean, there's actually a lot of high skill ceilings. But I would say just don't give up. Keep trying. Like, it can be pretty hard, but it's really rewarding to play. It's really fun. It's quite unique.
Yeah, it's probably the most unique class I've ever played in any game.
When your team is good, it's a fun experience. When your team is not good, you may have a bad time. That's what I'll say about Smuggler.
I'd like to add that it has carry potential, even if your team is messing up, just because of your insane CC and
Oh, yeah.
damage. You can always
Mhm.
turn around and fight.
Depends on who's at the helm, I would say, but yeah. And I think that about wraps it up. Appreciate your time and input, guys, and thanks for coming along.
Thanks for having me.
No problem.